Okay, so joining us today for our final pod of the season, we are joined by Manchester City writer Sam Lee, senior football writer Oli Kay, and Manchester football writer Mark Critchley as well. Sam, let's start with you. You know, Manchester City, fourth consecutive Premier League title. And I was just thinking about the significance of this, actually, considering the quality of teams there are at this moment in the Premier League and the quality of football we are witnessing. This is pure English history for Manchester City, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we'll get to the elephant in the room
Yeah, for
in a
sure. We
minute,
have to, but
which it's not even an elephant. Like that
mm,
phrase doesn't even apply anymore, does it? Unless everyone's
mm.
saying there's a massive elephant over there. Let's talk about it at every opportunity. But in terms of the history, four titles in a row, and this massive look, there's that massive elephant we keep talking about. We won't really be able to like judge it
Mm.
properly until we know the outcome of that. But even if City are exonerated or found guilty of just not cooperating or whatever, people might not accept it. Regardless,
Mm.
um, we will talk about that in more depth. But on the pitch, and I will come back and justify this later on the pitch, what they're doing, what they have done, the hunger of the players after winning three in a row, a treble last
Mm.
year. Guardiola was asked after the match yesterday, do you feel like there's nothing left to achieve now? Do you feel like, you completed football? He was like, well, I felt like that last year after winning the treble. He's like, what am I still doing here? But then after a while, he started to think, well, nobody's won four in a row yet. And I would imagine he's going to wake up today, tomorrow, and go, well, they've got the FA Cup to think about first. After that, he'll go, well, nobody's won five in a row yet. And then he'll just go again. Like that
Mm.
hunger he's got, but it's not just him. It's all the players as well. Like
Mm.
it almost doesn't matter how much they're paid, where the money comes from. You can't replicate that in normal circumstances. It is like a really special team. They do play amazing football. Again, we'll talk about whether they're boring or not, or jeopardy and all this kind of stuff in a
Mm.
bit. And there's all the context and there's the shades of grey, which we will go into. But they're just, I think people's issue is they are too good. And
Mm.
we will go into all the different reasons for that if we've got time. But they're just too good. They're so good, and
Mm.
they're so consistent with it. That's not normal. Yeah, even United under Ferguson, with fewer challenges generally, but obviously an amazing team. They couldn't win
Mm.
four in a row. If they couldn't win four in a row, then that kind of says it itself. Arsenal never defended one.
Mm.
Chelsea couldn't do three. Before, United fans used to say to Chelsea fans, "You never won three in a row." But now it's four. That's the level.
Yeah, well, Critch, excluding the elephant in the room for now, can we say there has been some jeopardy this season, even for Manchester City, in the fact that, spells where Haaland wasn't available, spells where De Bruyne, the key playmaker, wasn't available, but also even think about the Rodri suspension where City genuinely dropped points. I mean, could we believe that? And then finally, the inevitable, I guess, happens again.
Yeah, look, I think Jeopardy, as Sam's touched on, Jeopardy is a really loaded word in City
Mm.
conversations. And look, I think there usually is. There usually are moments in a season where there'll be doubt, there'll be a reason for some of their closest challengers to believe that they can topple them. I think we've seen that season in, season out, and this season was no different in that respect. There was the run back in December where they had, I think it was one win in six. They dropped the back-to-back defeats in the autumn against Wolves and Arsenal in the league as well. So there have been those periods, but and there have been, the same sort of sliding doors moments that I'm sure yourself, Ayo, and a lot of Arsenal fans will be looking back on over spend the summer months thinking about them, like the Son chance the
Mm.
other night, right? Or I always come back to the Newcastle game at St James's Park and Oscar Bob's late goal. I think that felt like a real turning point. Just that was the moment where you're like, okay, well, this could be the start of something now. One of these runs that we always expect to happen. And so, yes, jeopardy, and moments where it could have gone differently, but City are champions again, and I think
Mm.
that is, you know. when when we go into a season, when we start at the start of every season, I think everybody on this podcast would probably agree that since the 100-point season in 2017-18, at the start of every single season since, if you'd asked us who do we expect to win the league, we would have said Manchester City. And
Mm.
5 out of 6 times since then, we would have been right. And I think that is why there are accusations of this becoming something of a procession, of it becoming predictable. But that's basically the definition of predictable, isn't it? If we can, at the start of the season, say it's going to be them, and then in the end it is, that's predictable. And yes, there are moments along the way where things are a little bit more uncertain, but and the closeness of the title races of the last 3 years, particularly, I think speak to that. But in the end, City end out on top, and that's what we've come to expect.
Yeah, Ollie, let's address it then, because you did write a piece, Manchester City's wonderful team and the 115 charges for alleged breaches of Premier League financial regulations. Can the achievements be separated by this over looming discourse of the 115 charges?
I think they can be. You can separate the team from the club. People, in response to the article I wrote, I had Manchester City fans up in arms saying that I shouldn't conflate the two. I had fans of every other club up in arms saying you can't separate the two. I was trying to be balanced and point out that yes, there are all these allegations of the club cheating, but it's not the team cheating. It's not Guardiola and his players who are accused of breaching regulations. It's they. You have to acknowledge, and it's really obvious that the club has been built up over a period of a decade, which includes a 9-year period in which their finances and the financial dealings are under ongoing and long-term investigation. There's no escaping that. Manchester City as a club can complain all they like about people pointing that out, but it's true. It's under investigation. They weren't cleared at the Court of Arbitration for Sport, as Pep Guardiola said. They were found guilty of non-cooperation. They were fined heavily, having been fined heavily in the past in 2014 by UEFA. So that it looks as if Manchester City and the rule book have had a relationship which is going to be put under severe scrutiny over the coming months. Finally, and it's long overdue. It's an embarrassment for the Premier League that it is that this sort of cloud has hung over City, but also the league itself for so long. So that is the elephant in the room. There's also the other elephant which relates to the accusations of sports washing and being used as a geopolitical tool, and are we comfortable with that, and state influence and all of the things come with that. But that seems to have quieted down really since the 115 charges. It's as if the 115 is the stick with which to beat.
Yeah, there's a different stick now.
Yeah,
and there'll be another one.
I mean, to be honest, I don't even know what the third one would be, because if you're accused of breaking financial regulations and if you're state owned, and if most normal football fans don't think that being owned by the vice president of the United Arab Emirates is a healthy thing for the game, then you do have legitimate sticks to be beaten with. But I also feel that Manchester City as a team, yes, you've got to say the team was built over that period and the club was built over that period, but they still weren't in a position where they were guaranteed to win one Premier League title, never mind 6 out of 7, never mind 4 in a row. It's extraordinary, the team that Guardiola has built, the culture he's built, the style he's built. You only have to look at Chelsea and Manchester United over the same period and the money they've spent while going backwards a lot of the time, and you see, well, having all that money is no guarantee of anything. So when people say, well, Lance Armstrong FC or Ben Johnson, or did you admire Ben Johnson? Did you admire Lance Armstrong for winning whatever it was, 7 Tour de France in a row? I think I get the parallel that people are.
It's not the same thing.
It isn't the same thing. It isn't the same thing. It's a club accused of cheating, breaking the rules, which the rules also. Look, I believe if they've broken those rules, they deserve to be punished. And if they've broken them 115 times, they deserve to be punished really, really, really heavily. But it's not like it's some really black and white thing like it is in cycling with Tour de France, where you talk about somebody pumping their veins full of EPO and human growth hormone and things like that. The question is about whether they've breached spending limits. It's more like Red Bull in Formula One. That doesn't guarantee, it gives you a pretty good chance, but it doesn't guarantee anything. There is still a separate football team, which, to my knowledge, they have not broken any rules. So that is bound to annoy both City lovers and City haters, what I've said. But I think you've got to acknowledge, and I do mean got to acknowledge, both things: the excellence of the football team and the everything that hangs over the club.
Yeah, and like obviously I've just been chirping in here and there, but if City are guilty, then relegate them. Like if it's like serious guilty verdicts,
do you fundamentally believe
them.
that would be good for the Premier League and the brand it's trying to
I don't think it's going to
uphold?
happen, but I'm not sitting here saying, they've not done anything wrong. I'm the same as everybody. Well, I'm not the same as everybody else because I'm willing to wait for an outcome, which seems to set me apart from a lot of people. I just want to wait and see what this long, complicated process finds at the end of it. Would it be good for the Premier? Well, I don't know. We've had the last couple of months of discourse of it's boring, it's inevitable that they're going to win the league and no jeopardy. So maybe it would be good for the Premier League.
It wouldn't be boring, would it?
Took them out of it, and then let Arsenal and Liverpool and whoever else, if Chelsea keep progressing, then maybe they can have their own title race, which isn't boring. But so if they are guilty, then like relegate them if it's really serious. But I was so pleased over the weekend that Jurgen Klopp said, because he's been critical of. It's almost like Klopp does separate the team and the club, because he's been quite critical of City and spending. He's had some barbed comments over the years, and he was obviously asked about the charges in his final press conference on Friday in the embargoed section, and his comments came to light on Sunday. And he said, "Look, the charges. We'll see what happens. I don't know what's going on with that, but Pep is the only manager who could win 4 in a row with Man City." And I'm so glad that he's like kind of legitimized that point of view, because for Oli to say you can separate the two, for me to say, because I've been thinking this for a while, even if City are found guilty, I still think you can say fair play to the players and the manager for doing what they've done, even if they are guilty, because even with these massive advantages that, let's say, they would have had if they're found guilty, it's still not that size of advantage. Like, you could almost, like, the more you pay them, the more complacent they could get, because they just think, well, no one's going to pay us this anywhere else. We can't leave, in fact, because no one's going to match these wages elsewhere. We're just going to stay here and earn a fortune forever. We don't need to win a title. We won the treble. Or before you get to that, we did 100 points. But they keep coming back. This isn't normal. It's what I was saying earlier on. This isn't normal. And Klopp, I'm really glad that Klopp legitimised that point of view, because we could say that, I'm the City correspondent for The Athletic. People are obviously going to think I believe that. Like, for Oli to say it, like, whatever Oli says, people are going to be off. That's just how it works. but for Jurgen Klopp to say that, Jurgen Klopp knows. And I put that to Guardiola yesterday, and he choked up, because he's got that praise from Guardiola. He's got that praise from Klopp. Somebody who knows what they're talking about. They know what it's like to be in a dressing room and to get their players to stay hungry, to play brilliant football. All these other things we can't really comprehend in our kind of FIFA/football manager understanding of how football works. It's nothing like that. These guys know. People in football know how it works. We're just on the outside kind of shouting at clouds. These guys know. So for Klopp to kind of legitimize that point of view and articulate it pretty well, I mean, I'm very happy about it. I don't think a lot of people will be, but I am, because I personally think that is indisputable. And also, obviously, most of the charges relate to, and like, not just the non-cooperating, but the bulk of like you were paying this and you were paying that. It's all early on. But even then, in that period, okay, maybe it helped City win the first trophy, the first title under Mancini in the FA Cup, but they'd win the title, then they'd drop off again. And then they'd change the manager, they'd win the title, then they'd drop off again. Then they dropped off again. And then Guardiola came. Like, if it's that easy, it's just what Oli was saying earlier about United, Chelsea, all these obvious examples. But if the cheating was the biggest factor, the alleged cheating, then why haven't they won all of them under Mancini and Pellegrini? Where was this amazing football? Where was this dominance then? That is the difference. You could say that cheating would put them in a certain position, but it cannot ever be this position. It cannot ever be 6 titles out of 7. That is Guardiola. Also, we'll see this when Guardiola leaves, because maybe they'll nail the next appointment and they'll just carry on being amazing forever.
But I guess that would be the
when
test
Guardiola leaves,
of
we're
what
not
they've
going to see
built,
this
right?
again. We're not going to see this again, and then people will go, "Oh, actually, yeah, it was that crazy fella," because it's him.
Yeah, we must also say that Manchester City strenuously deny allegations over the breaches of financial rules. Critch, I'm thinking here, is there an element of Manchester City being the outsider that has, shaken up the status quo? We look at teams like Liverpool, Arsenal to a certain degree, Manchester United, teams that we are accustomed to having a really strong identity within the Premier League. And then out comes this madness that is Guardiola and a financial might. And it's changed things for futures to come.
I think I wouldn't want to characterize the charges and the investigation and the whole process behind this as some sort of animus against City because they are the new kids on the block, they're new money, and they're a threat to an established elite. I think what everybody has to sit back and really kind of just understand is that the charges against them are incredibly serious. They aren't of the level of other ones that we've seen this season against Everton and Nottingham Forest, where it's a clear kind of clean breach of PSR rules. There's breaches of PSR rules in there. There's falsifying accounts in there. There's payments to managers. There's payments to players that shouldn't have been allowed or accepted. These are incredibly serious accusations that aren't going to get aren't brought lightly and aren't going to be resolved quickly either. So, when Everton and Nottingham Forest fans and fans of other clubs this season have been saying to sort this out quickly, and how can this be allowed to hang over the league? And doesn't it mean there's an asterisk against basically everything that we're watching? I think that's all kind of true. I think we're all kind of going along with the show at the same time. But we also need to wait and for that full and proper process to be carried out, because that's the only way in the end that we're going to get to the bottom of all this. And look, I think Sam's right in that what he's saying, in that a lot of people's minds will already be made up. I think whatever the judgment is, people will have their opinions and are probably going to stick to them. I don't think it explains everything that's happened at Manchester City. If it's proven, I don't think it explains everything, all of Manchester City's success over the last 10 years. But I think it does. It would even then mean that they've perhaps been able to put themselves in a position where they have all these great players and this great manager who we're not necessarily blaming for it, but are there because of the financial advantage that has been gained if all this is proven. So it's an incredibly complex, convoluted, investigation and body of work that needs to be gone through by the Premier League and their lawyers and Manchester City's lawyers. And something tells me that we're not going to be getting a resolution for some time to come.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on, because Sam alluded to it at the top of the pod on the style of play we've become accustomed to watching at Manchester City. This question, are City boring, is one that's always sort of loomed over the inevitability of them winning the Premier League. But, Oli, in your piece, there's a beautiful line that says, but how can you not admire Guardiola and a group of players who over the past 7 seasons have reached levels of consistency and brilliance arguably unmatched in English football history? Sam, is there a feeling, because of the sense of inevitability, it's same old City once again? No one can beat them. They're just too bloody good.
I get it, because I think it kind of starts with playing style, and obviously there's a lot of dislike for them and charges stuff thrown in, but we've covered that. But it's like the play. I get it, because people were saying City were boring just in terms of their playing style, not the title races, a couple of seasons ago, and I get it, because people want to watch end-to-end chaotic football, really, don't they? Or if they don't like City, or they just want some twists and turns in the title race, they want to see City go to Goodison or Craven Cottage or Selhurst Park or whatever, and they want to see, they could drop pointed. These are difficult places to go. But then Copenhagen is not a great example, because people don't think of Copenhagen being a great team. But when City went to Copenhagen in the Champions League last 16, Guardiola realised that their biggest threat or a huge asset they had was the crowd, the noise of the crowd. And he was like, well, we just need to quieten this down. Because United had lost they'd given Bayern a tough game. I think they beat Galatasaray, something like that. And he didn't want that to happen. He does not want counter-attacking. He does not want to get the crowd up when you go to away games. He doesn't want you, really. This isn't why he does it. But what all of the things he wants from a football match are not what the neutral wants. They don't want to see, and myself included. When City went out of the Champions League and I was watching Bayern against Real Madrid, I just like the open nature of the game, the drama at the end of the Real Madrid game. That's what people want. And Guardiola sets out to kind of destroy that, basically. So I get why people say that's boring. But then obviously they're so good at that the title races can become boring too, because they always win. But I do think, I do genuinely think, and this is going to sound like me being blinkered again. But the title races in recent years, City have won 4 in a row. But the title races have been great, some of them. Like the 2 with Liverpool, been unbelievable. But it's what do you want from football? Do you want both teams winning? And there's so much tension among the fan bases, and they just win and win and win. And there's ups and downs in those games. Or do you want teams dropping points left, right, and centre? Which is how it used to be. But now it isn't. Like, the 2 against Liverpool were really good. This was a really good one. And in terms of like no jeopardy and stuff like that, and this isn't me digging out Arsenal, because remember, my point is that City are great, and my point is Arsenal are great. Arsenal played 18 Premier League games this calendar year, and they won 16. They drew against City, and they lost that one at Villa. You could argue, where's the jeopardy in that? And I'm not digging at Arsenal. They were really good.
You're praising them.
Yeah, but that's because Arsenal are coming from trying to regain.
But yeah, exactly.
Their dominance or trying to regain.
Where's the jeopardy in Arsenal doing that? They're just a really good team. They win their matches. That period a couple of months ago when they scored an average of 5 goals 4 games in a row, they were just battering teams. But obviously the playing style lends itself a bit more to, okay, this is good because they were scoring goals. City score goals. City score a lot of goals. But I get it, because we look at, since they went out of the Champions League, they had 6 games left, and it's like, okay, they've got to win these games now. I think that was after the Arsenal, when they lost to Villa and Liverpool lost to Palace. They've got to win these games, and then the closest you get to jeopardy in that really is the Ortega save from Son, which was a massive moment of jeopardy. That is drama. That is huge drama in the title race. Everyone was watching. People would have wanted Son to score that. That is huge drama. But City won anyway. And then there was some drama on Sunday when West Ham scored, Arsenal then equalised, and the Etihad was really tense, but City won anyway. And I'm sure everybody was watching. I think, City are just going to win anyway. So I get why people say the style is boring, and I get why people say the races are boring, but I do just think it's just based in this kind of general dislike for City, and it's just another way to write them off, because you can't see a team that's that good and that consistent and that hungry. I see why people, because like City have won it again, okay, but like these title races have been good. I just think people don't like the outcome. If Liverpool had won an extra one of those title races because they'd won by a point, would that have been better? Like the race is the same. The race is the race.
But if Liverpool had won one of those title races, it would necessarily mean that City had dropped points at some point, and that's what we're talking about, right?
But if Liverpool had beaten,
we're talking about a very
only 1 or 2 points.
Yeah, only 1 or 2. But we were talking about a very different nature of a title race there, which is, and this is a completely new phenomenon. This thing where we have teams who, just win, right? It's something that we've only really seen over the last 5 or 6 years, and I think. Look, we're talking about City here, and I think sometimes, especially City fans, and when people talk about this, I think they can get quite defensive about it. I don't think it's an accusation against City that they're boring or that they've made the Premier League boring. I think it's not even just about City, as Sam's rightly pointed out there. Arsenal have gone on these runs. Liverpool have gone on these runs in the past as well. I think it's a wider symptom of a financial disparity of which City are part of which Liverpool are part of which Arsenal are part of within English football, within European football, that has meant that there are fewer games in a season now that you expect the teams who you would expect to be challenging for the title to lose. Those margins are much finer. Sam's talking about Son going through on goal and Ortega. I agree, it's a huge moment, sliding doors moment, but those in the past, those weren't moments, they were single games. They would be runs of games, right?
Yeah.
Now we're talking about fleeting moments that can go one way or another, but the margins used to be a bit wider. Now they're so much finer, and that's, I think, is a product of just how the financial foundations of the game now are skewed towards not just City, but several, a group of elite clubs who we expect to challenge for these titles and invariably do year in, year out.
That's absolutely correct. And if you look at if you look at German football and the way Bayern have dominated there until this season, you look at Paris Saint-Germain, the way they've dominated in France, that has become the normalized title race in numerous leagues across Europe. It's a product of.
It was Juventus for a while in Serie A in the same way.
Yeah.
And that's why I get that people don't like it. People don't want that to happen here.
Absolutely.
But the races are different though, isn't there? Like when Bayern have won it in the past, they've just streamed it. And City have streamed a couple.
They are. Yeah. But you've often seen
it's closer.
To make the sort of distinction between what's happened with City and what's happened with, say, Juventus and over the years of PSG, Bayern, often those clubs would change coach because there was felt to be something rotten in the dressing room, or because there was the coach was felt to be a weak point because they felt they needed a G up. Now you compare that with City, where it's been, look, they've had, just looking, there was an 11-game spell earlier this season where they won 4, drew 4, and lost 3. That was their sticky patch. Sticky patch for a title challenging team used to be sort of 5 games without a win in January and that kind of thing. But it's the level of excellence is so much higher now, but it's also higher at Manchester City, I think, than in Bayern. Bayern were sort of cruising, sleepwalking to league titles some of the time. Paris Saint-Germain the same. Things were still felt to be wrong at those clubs. Man City have had to be incredibly focused to win 18, draw 3 of the last 21 games. Some of them by big margins, some of them by very, very narrow margins. I actually don't think, we talk about, do we like teams to be a bit more flawed rather than perfect? I don't think they've been as perfect this season as, for example, the first Guardiola title-winning season. I loved watching that team. I was absolutely spellbound by them, captivated by them. I felt that was a much more enjoyable team to watch, even though they were, I think they won it by 19 points or something that season. So that was complete dominance. I wouldn't want that to happen every year. Definitely wouldn't.
Yeah, but Ollie, do you not think that's because we'd never seen that before? So it was fresh, it was exciting,
no,
it was intense, it was, what I mean?
I do genuinely think that their football was faster, freer flowing, more exciting.
It was for sure.
You look at this season and it's been, central defenders. It hasn't been fullbacks bombing forward. It hasn't been sort of David Silva and De Bruyne in the middle of midfield. It's been much more controlled, much more composed, and Haaland up front. Look, he's incredible to watch when the ball is in the 6-yard box or the penalty area. But he doesn't excite. The forward line of, say, Grealish, Foden, Haaland. I don't think that excites me as much as watching Sane, Sterling, Aguero did in those first few seasons. So that, look, it's a different question, but I think that shows that, look, I feel there has been jeopardy the last few seasons, and they haven't been winning leagues as comfortably. I mean, since that first one, there was the first one under Guardiola, 19 points. There was the lockdown one, 2020-21, which was it 12 points? It felt like that season didn't.
They won 24 games in a row in all competitions.
But it didn't feel like they built up a head of steam, and we were witnessing something incredible. I mean, that was just the nature of pandemic football, really. But but I feel that the 17-18, 18-19 team was better. But what's really incredible about this team is it gets to even November, December, and they are really going to put their foot on it, foot to the floor, and they're just going to win. So you look at Arsenal being a few points ahead going into January, February, March, and you thought, well, it's not going to be enough because this lot are just going to keep going. So there is jeopardy, but if you look at the balance sheet, the roll of honour of English football the last 7 years, 6 titles, something we've never seen before, 4 in a row. That is not healthy for the Premier League. It's not healthy for English football, just as it wasn't healthy when Manchester United and Liverpool were dominating. What is healthy is seeing a team play that way, and the way they've played under Guardiola. I don't think it's healthy seeing a club built on the same foundations, but I think there's still plenty of things to admire within the club. So can you separate the two? I think you can, within a conversation, within an argument, within the internal monologue, but you can also link the two. And I think you have to do both. You have to separate them. You have to link them.
Just in terms of the change in the style, I think loads of City fans agree as well. Like, they would take that Centurion team over any City team. Like, they would take Leroy Sané over basically any City player. I mean, that obviously isn't true, but they love Leroy Sané, and he basically had one good season. And one of these things we have to, that I'll off loads of City fans by saying that. These things we keep mentioning, like, this isn't normal, like the hunger, the desire, all this kind of stuff. But like, Guardiola keeps adapting, and we don't notice it because they keep winning. But they can't play like they did in 17-18 because teams don't give them that space anymore. They've was learned new, from like you both said. They were like, well, we can't do this. But obviously the best way to counteract that, and City fans don't always like it as well. This is why we go back to that boring debate where I can understand it. A lot of the time, City fans are just like, oh, get the ball forward, move the ball quicker. But Guardiola literally said, like, when you're playing against a team that park the bus, you got to slow down, take a coffee, move to the halfway line, 1,000 million passes. That's what you've got to do. And again, people don't really want to see that. But people in the game, like Klopp, they know how difficult it is to keep reinventing yourself, stay at the top. And it's necessary, that change. And it's interesting because Guardiola has become more conservative, I think, over the years, but also I think he's had to be. Like, if you look at like his Barca team, can't play like that anymore. It was like they were like pressing teams, and teams like, what the hell's this? But now everyone's pressing and counter pressing. And you need to counteract that. And that is basically put everyone in the middle of the pitch. Maybe this isn't the best way, but it's the best way so far, and it's what Guardiola's doing. Put everyone in the middle of the pitch, make loads of short passes. So at least if you lose it, you've only got to stick a leg out to try and win it back. Or somebody else is there to do it as well. And it's very, very patient. The whole thing that they've done over the last few years is built on that patience now. It can't be like it was in 17-18. But again, that's because he's kept reinventing, and he knows you can't just attack a park bus by like running into it as quickly as possible. You can't play those 1-2s all the time because there's just like 5 centre-backs and 3 guys guarding 3 midfielders. They've had to keep adapting. But yeah, that style change was necessary. And it's another reason why like Klopp will give him that praise, because he knows how difficult it is.
Well, post-match, Guardiola spoke about his future, and he was alluding to the fact that potentially he might be coming to the end of his tenure. Danny Taylor has a written piece on The Athletic about the search for motivation. And I guess I want all your thoughts on this, if I could, is that what is the motivation for Manchester City now? The club is being transformed beyond measure in terms of trophy, in terms of playing style. Guardiola, especially in his tenure, has been integral to that. But also, I guess after the treble-winning season, he was always a thought that how on earth could they get ready for another season? You're emotionally drained, you're physically drained, and can you achieve those highs? They've gone one more. Mark, is saying 5 Premier Leagues in a row enough motivation to keep going at this level?
I think it probably is at Manchester City, yeah, honestly. I think, were we not having this exact same conversation last year about the treble, right? And what worlds did they have left to conquer? Like, it's like, do you remember Pinky and the Brain when they said, what are we going to do tonight? And tonight we're going to take over the world. That's it. That's Manchester City every single season. They just want to win and dominate on every single level. I imagine that, Pep, I wasn't surprised by the comment about that he feels that he's closer to the end rather than the beginning. I think I remember when he first arrived, being told how he kind of treated that first year. We always thought of him as somebody who would do maybe 3-4 years max at a club. But he treated that first year as a kind of year zero, just because there was so much work to do to really put things in place. And even though he'd had this club tailored to, just about all his needs and in a position to give him everything that he wanted, he still felt that he needed to take a bit of extra time in order to achieve everything he wanted. And look, ever since then, he's got to the point where he needs to sign a new contract, and he signed one, and he's kept going and he's kept going. I think we are closer to the end of that process now. But I still think, look, every single season there's questions about City's desire, and sometimes it creeps into the dressing room, sometimes it creeps into the players. The one person who's always pushing them forwards is Pep Guardiola. You had the happy flowers speech last season. You had moments where you could question whether they just conquered all that they could need to conquer. But he pushes them forward each and every time, and I think that will be the motivation going forward. Nobody's done 5 in a row, so why not?
Yeah.
Why not 6? Hey? I think there's an end point, absolutely, but I don't feel we're just quite there yet.
Yeah, Ollie, can a human physically deal with this level of intensity? I know he's an intense human, but I mean, for any mortal, these levels are insane. I mean, he's only 53 years old. He looked tired post-match. He looked absolutely knackered, and they've still got an FA Cup still to come. One big one, another big one to get another over your cheeky neighbours.
You look at him on the touchline. You look at him in. I think you see a difference in him pre-match where he seems calm and look like he slept well. You look at him post-match and he's often he looks absolutely exhausted. So even when we feel there's no jeopardy, no drama in those games, he seems like somebody who sort of living every second of it, kicking every ball, looking completely wearied by watching a supremely controlled team for 90 minutes. God knows how he'd be if he was in charge of that Manchester United team. Well, they'd be a lot better for one thing. But he's look, I remember seeing him in the press conference after his Barcelona team were knocked out of the Champions League by Chelsea in his final season, 2012, and it looked like he was sort of broken by that. 4 years in that job as a Catalan, as somebody who's in their first job, as someone who's emotionally invested in that, with the Mourinho thing and that rivalry with Real Madrid and how incredibly intense it was in that period. That seemed, I've rarely seen somebody look so ready for a break as Guardiola looked after that. Bayern, he seemed to be a different character. He seemed much more serene, much more composed. I mean, they were winning the league by big margins every year, so maybe not surprising. But again, in Manchester, he seems to be much more composed, much more resilient, ready to go again. He doesn't seem worn out by the end of the season to the same extent. If you speak to people at Man City, they were surprised and really very pleasantly surprised when he extended his contract quite early in his tenure. They were even more surprised when he extended it again. There were people within the club high up who felt, as they closed in on the treble and the Champions League last season, that he might sort of do the mic drop at the end of the season and go and say, look, that this has been perfect. This is the perfect ending. I wasn't that surprised to hear him say it, sort of hint at something similar yesterday, but he sounds like somebody who does want to find the energy to go again. But I do think we're probably approaching the end game here. So maybe this next season will be his last, and I can't begin to imagine how it might go.
Yeah, Sam, you made him cry by mentioning Jurgen Klopp, and he's had this adversary for many years now in the Premier League, someone that's pushed him toe to toe. That's motivation alone to raise your game. Our coaches like Arteta, Postecoglou, Pochettino, maybe enough to keep that hunger going. Someone that takes him toe to toe, lifts his game up. Arsenal are getting close, but the Klopp era has been really special at Liverpool.
Yeah, so he said yesterday, he was like, Arteta and Arsenal have shown us they're still gonna be here. He said, Arteta's young, he's still hungry, and those players are still hungry. Critch said earlier, if you go back in all of our predictions for the last few years, we probably all put City to win the title. Next season, I think surely they can't do it again. Surely they can't do it again. And surely Arsenal.
You're still going to pick them. Come on.
Of course you would. You just would.
To be fair, I don't think I am. I think I did Liverpool this year. I probably did Liverpool last year because I just think they can't win it again. Can
really?
They? Yeah.
Fair enough. All right. Sorry.
And also because I always feel like, but when Liverpool, so obviously City won the 2 in a row, the first 2 titles, and then Liverpool missed out in the second one, and then they came back stronger. And obviously, Liverpool kind of had that cycle of really great season and then drop off a bit and then come back strong. So I was always kind of expecting that. But like Arsenal, last summer, I didn't think they would go as strong as they have done. But now I'm thinking that's going to be so. I mean, maybe they're just exhausted by it, but I think they're going to be so fueled by that they'll push again, and they're probably going to be my favourites going into next season. But that will fuel Guardiola. I mean, but there's always like whoever the individual is, it's like the constant threat of Man United. He's always saying, and he said this year, like earlier on in the season, he was like, "Look, see, I did say I thought United were back, and now they're having good results because there was obviously a period I don't remember now in like October or November when they must have been doing all right. When was it, Critch? But he was saying,
I don't think there has been this season.
We're all scratching our heads. We're all scratching our heads.
When they beat Luton and Newport, and
yeah, that was
maybe it was last season. But he was like, look, but he's always got the feeling going into a season. You know, there have been periods when they struggled, and at that point, you know, people were talking about our Villa in the title race. You know, Spurs could do something because nobody looked that sure of themselves really. So all these guys, all this threat, the potential for United to get more players in, maybe change the manager, go again, that will spur him on. Arteta is going to be the main one. Who knows about Liverpool? But it's not even whether they're there or not. It's the threat that they might be there. That's going to spur him on. But also he said something in his press conference. It was almost like that's what we've got to compete against. But he was talking about his own points tallies. Like it almost doesn't matter who's out there doing what. Like he's just built differently. He's not normal. Now, Michael Cox did that piece recently, like saying it would make sense if City win the league this year for him to call it quits because he's got nothing left to prove. And that everything he said, it was completely normal for him to say that. And all these points he made were like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. He's got nothing left to achieve. His legacy will be secure. But he doesn't think like that, does he? Like he doesn't think like that. We do. He doesn't. So in terms of his future, I've got no info on it. He hasn't decided, but it wouldn't surprise. I mean, it does feel like he's got one more year left in him, and that's it. But it wouldn't surprise me if he carried on because he's just not normal. He just wants to keep doing it.
You just think of, I'm just thinking about what City do in the summer. Quickly, Sam, you know, you think of players like Phil Foden, who's on his 6th Premier League title, so young, like, you know, and also at that level where you're feeling he's coming to his peak, right? It's just a special player. Who do City bring in to reinforce if they do bring people in? We've already seen some really good signings. Guardiola's been brilliant. Obviously, Kovacic is now finding his space now in that midfield.
The team probably got worse last summer. The team probably got worse, and they might win the double again. And they could. I mean, to be fair, if they got, this is a whole other thing. If they got through to the Champions League semis, I don't know if they'd have won the league because I think there would have been extra demands. I don't know if they'd have managed it. I don't know. Like Paquetá's of interest, Bruno Guimaraes is of interest. There could be another summer of Kyle Walker potentially going. I think they're looking at Frimpong, who was at City and left to go to Celtic and is now tearing it up. Players of that level, really. You know, they're signing Savio from Troyes via Girona, but he might not even end up at City next season. You know, Foden's now playing in the middle, so maybe they go for another winger. Doku, really good start to the season, really good end to the season. You know, if he carries on, then that's where they get stronger. Guardiola's been unreal. But yeah, like the signings really last summer and the business, and the Gundogan going, Mahrez going, the team got weaker, really, which kind of undermines all my points in some way. Like they got weaker and they're still winning. So I don't know what I'm talking about. But yeah, in terms of the summer, those are the kind of players that, you know, Paquetá, Bruno, Frimpong, they're some of the ones we know anyway. There'll be more to come to. Like they had to look at Kimmich, they had to look at Musiala. I don't think either of them are going to be possible. I mean, imagine they got Musiala. Imagine that. Like that's please, like Bruno and Paquetá. Don't
let those be your parting words, please. No, not well. I mean, City.
If we're talking about the summer, you know, they're like De Bruyne. Yeah. It's possible that De Bruyne goes. It's possible Bernardo Silva goes. And you're talking about losing players the stature of Gundogan and Mahrez. Those, like one of those two, Walker as well, if he does, you lose even more. And then almost no matter who you bring in, even if they're unbelievable, they don't have that game knowledge. They don't have all of that Guardiola programming in their heads. Even if they're brilliant, they're going to be brilliant in different ways. It's going to take them a while. So there'll be jeopardy yet.
All right, gents, thank you so much for your time, Sam, Oli, Critch, as always. And that is it from us for the domestic season. We're taking a little short break and we will be back at the start of June, taking you inside all the stories from the Euros, Copa America and transfer window as well. So for this season anyway, thank you so much for listening. If you want to watch more episodes of the show, please subscribe to the channel. We'll be joined by the likes of David Ornstein, Matt Slater, Adam Crafton, Carl Anker, and plenty more through the season. If you'd like to listen to the episodes in full in audio form, search The Athletic FC wherever you get your podcasts from.